But how to sell a home after 65 and before it's too late? You're reaching retirement age. You're starting to think about selling, but here's what you don't realize. Your timeline to sell has already been shaped by decisions you didn't even know you were making. I'm Melina, Rissone, and I work with older adults and seniors in San Diego who are considering selling a home later in life. Most of these homeowners have lived in their homes for a long time, often decades. These usually aren't rushed decisions. These are thoughtful people who have built a life in one place, and when selling comes up, it usually is because their way of life slowly changed over time. Selling a home as an older adult usually begins with an idle thought, something that you notice. Maybe maintenance feels heavier than it used to be. Maybe the yard work takes longer. Maybe the stairs are more of an effort. Or maybe for you, there's no single issue at all. Just a sense that planning ahead might be better than waiting for your circumstances to force a decision. That's what this video is about, being ready so you don't need to rush later on. I specialize in San Diego, and many older adults I work with here have built significant equity over time. We've experienced long-term demand and relatively limited housing supplies, which has contributed to higher home values compared to other markets. For long-time homeowners, that equity represents a huge opportunity, but it also can create uncertainty. One of the most important things I want you to hear is this: you do not need to be ready to sell to start learning. Learning doesn't lock you into anything. It doesn't put your home on the market. It doesn't commit you to moving. It simply gives you information so that when the time comes, whether that's soon or years from now, you're not starting from zero. Many older adults tell me, "I'm just thinking about it," or "I don't need to do anything yet." And that's exactly the right time to ask questions, because the earlier you understand your options, the more control you have down the road. Selling later in life really does require a different mindset than selling earlier. Earlier in life, selling is often driven by outside forces: a job transfer, a growing family, a relocation that has a clear deadline. Later in life, selling tends to be driven by internal considerations: comfort, energy, simplicity, planning ahead. At this stage, the goal isn't always to maximize price at all costs. The goal is alignment. Does this home still support the way you live today? Does it support how you want to live in 5 years from now? Does it feel manageable? That's why rushing the process often works against you. When decisions are made under pressure, options can narrow quickly. When decisions are made with time and information, the experience tends to feel very different. So with that in mind, let's talk about downsizing. This is often talked about as if it's purely a number decision: less square footage, fewer rooms, lower cost. But in real life, downsizing is much more about how a home functions day to day than how big it is on paper. A home that's a bit smaller can actually feel harder to live in if there are stairs or if the layout isn't intuitive. On the other hand, even a larger home can feel easier simply because everything is in one level and designed for how you move through your space. And you're probably underestimating the impact of factors like HOA rules, noise levels, parking and accessibility, and so forth. Less maintenance doesn't always mean less stress if new restrictions or shared spaces don't align with your lifestyle. The most successful downsizing decisions happen when older adults focus less on smaller and more on simpler. When the goal is comfort, ease, and flexibility, the right next home becomes much clearer, and regret is far less likely. Now, one of the biggest concerns you'll probably have is about property taxes, and rightly so. Here in California, many longtime homeowners benefit from very low property tax assessment because they purchased their homes years ago. That lower tax base can make selling feel risky, especially if buying another home is part of the plan. The fear is often, if I sell, I'll never be able to afford the taxes again. California does have rules that may allow homeowners aged 55 and up to transfer their existing low property tax base to a replacement home under Proposition 19. When those rules apply, they can make downsizing or relocating more realistic. But, and this is important, these rules come with a fine print. Timing matters, value comparison matters, and the benefit is not automatic. I've spoken with many older adults who delayed planning for years because they assumed selling would automatically mean a major tax increase. In some cases, that assumption wasn't accurate. In other cases, the rules applied differently than expected. Either way, assumptions created unnecessary stress. That's why I always encourage older adults to verify how property tax rules apply to their specific situation with a qualified tax professional or the local assessor's office. Meanwhile, I'll coordinate the real estate side of the plan so it aligns with your broader strategy. If information like this is helpful, please subscribe to the channel. I share videos like this to help you understand your options around housing and real estate without pressure or urgency. Subscribing just means you'll see future topics when they come up. Now back to the video. So, capital gains taxes are another topic that deserves careful attention well before a home is listed. If your home has been your primary residence for at least 2 of the last 5 years, current IRS guidelines may allow you to exclude a portion of the gain when you sell. Individuals may qualify for one exclusion amount, and married couples filing jointly may qualify for a higher amount, assuming all requirements are met. In a market like San Diego, where property values have increased over long periods of time, it's not uncommon for long-time homeowners to exceed those thresholds. That doesn't automatically make selling a bad idea, but it's something you should be aware of. Understanding potential tax exposure before you sell allows you to plan instead of react. This is where working with the CPA or your financial advisor can be extremely valuable. When tax planning and real estate planning happen together, the entire process tends to feel more predictable. Another factor to consider when selling after age 65 is family involvement. Usually this comes from concern. Adult children often step in because they're thinking about safety, about logistics, and about what might happen if something changes suddenly. But concern can easily turn into urgency, especially when the family doesn't have the clear information they need. When that happens, the conversation often shifts from "what do you want?" to "what do you need?" And that's a subtle but important difference. Advice starts coming faster, timeliness starts shrinking, and seniors can feel like they're being asked to react instead of plan. When planning gets delayed too long, the most common consequence is loss of leverage. Instead of choosing when to sell, homeowners end up reacting to a deadline created by health, safety, or family pressure. That often means selling during a less favorable market window, accepting terms they wouldn't have chosen otherwise, or skipping steps that normally protect value, like thoughtful preparation or strategic timing. Another consequence is financial surprise. Seniors who wait often discover too late that property taxes, capital gain exposure, or replacement housing costs don't line up the way they assumed. At that point, choices shrink quickly. Homes may need to be sold as is, temporary housing becomes more expensive, or family members step in to manage decisions under stress. None of this and none of these outcomes are needed, and they are avoidable. So again, the most important thing is to understand your options financially and logistically. Once you've done that, family conversations tend to slow down. Assumptions get replaced with facts. Fear gets replaced with understanding. And the decision starts to feel less emotional and more grounded. Learning early means having enough information to keep family discussions calm and centered on your needs, and not on worst-case scenarios. Once selling starts to feel like a real possibility, the next big question is usually about what comes next. Where will you live? Of course, there's no one-size-fits-all answers. I mentioned downsizing already because it's so common. Many seniors downsize into a smaller single-story home or a condo. Others like to prioritize low maintenance or relocating to be closer to family. Many people explore age-qualified or independent living communities. Some even choose to rent for a period of time to maintain flexibility. Each option comes with trade-offs: monthly costs, maintenance, responsibilities, lifestyle changes. What matters is how that choice supports your day-to-day life and your long-term comfort. Sometimes staying in the same neighborhood is emotionally important. Other times, reducing responsibility is the priority. I often help clients look at multiple scenarios side by side. When you can see how different choices affect monthly expenses, cash flow, and lifestyle, the decision often becomes more clear and less overwhelming. Another area that causes stress for many seniors is preparing a home that's been lived in for decades. Homes with long ownership histories often have deferred maintenance, older systems, and years of accumulated belongings. The idea of getting the house ready can feel like too much, especially if you're already managing other changes in life. Here's the reality. Most older adults do not need to completely renovate their home to sell successfully in San Diego. Buyers often care far more about location, layout, and overall condition than about cosmetic perfection. Strategic preparation usually focuses on safety, cleanliness, and addressing obvious maintenance issues, not major remodels. In fact, over-improving can sometimes reduce your net proceeds. Spending money on upgrades that buyers don't value rarely pays off. Knowing what buyers in your specific neighborhood actually expect helps protect your equity and your energy. This is where having guidance can make the process feel manageable instead of overwhelming. Timing is another piece of the puzzle that deserves careful thought. While certain seasons tend to bring buyer activity, the best time to sell is often dictated more by your personal situation than by the calendar. Health considerations, family coordination, and housing availability often matter more than seasonality. Selling later in life frequently involves coordinating multiple moving parts. Planning ahead allows you to move at a pace that feels right rather than reacting to urgency. Selling a home in California also involves detailed disclosure requirements. This becomes especially important when trusts, powers of attorney, or shared family decision makers are involved. Clear documentation and professional coordination help ensure everything is handled properly. For legal or tax matters beyond real estate, you should always consult a licensed professional. A coordinated approach tends to reduce stress and uncertainty. Here's the takeaway from this video. Selling a home after age 65 is a major decision, but it does not have to feel overwhelming. With the right information, thoughtful planning, and time to evaluate your options, selling can support your goals and give you more flexibility moving forward. If you're considering selling, even if it's just the earliest thoughts, you don't have to figure out everything on your own. The most important step is understanding your options early while you still have flexibility. I work with older adults and seniors throughout San Diego who want thoughtful, pressure-free guidance as they plan their next steps. Sometimes that means selling soon. Sometimes it means planning for years down the road. And sometimes it simply means confirming that staying put makes sense. If you found this video helpful and want more information like this, please hit subscribe. I share videos focused on real-life housing decisions for seniors and older adults in San Diego, and these are designed to help you stay informed without pressure. And of course, if you're thinking about making a move, please reach out using the link below. I'd be more than happy to help. Thanks for spending this time with me, and I'll see you in the next video.